Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Hello, welcome to Yogananda podcast. We're on chapter 17. I'm with Mike, Chris, and Lauren. How are the three of you?
Looking forward to
Very
this.
well.
Stooges, great to have you. So this chapter is, what's it called, Lauren? This chapter.
I should know that.
Something with sapphires, and there's
Percy and the three sapphires.
Yeah,
there we go.
Chris, what's it called?
What they said.
Well, no, say it. I want you to say it. I want you to say it.
Oh, I know why he's doing this.
Mike, what is it called?
Sassy and the three sapphires.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what I said, and my wife laughed at me yesterday. She said,
Is it right?
There's no Indian named Sassy. You should know that. It is Shashi. The name is Shashi and the three
Oh.
sapphires. So Shashi is how this name should be pronounced. Obviously, it's spelt in the English as
Shashi.
Sassy,
Yeah.
but apparently,
Okay.
if you said Sassy to an Indian, they'd just laugh at you because, yeah. So it's Shashi and the three sapphires. My expectations. Let's talk about our expectations from the chapter. So I've got. I'm quite interested in how Guruji heals the different types of disciples and how he deals with them, amongst other things. What about you, Lauren?
For me, it's a lot about the blessings that the gurus give us, almost in spite of our shortcomings or our willingness to follow their advice or not, but also about the downfalls of not following what they say. And it's a chapter all about miracles too, which I quite like.
Mike?
Yeah, whenever miracles happen, I always wonder why are they happening? Who's learning? Is it the bystanders who are learning or the person himself? And there's a few cases of healings in here, and we will discuss the reason for all of them. And like in our chapter today, there will be someone healed but not permanently, and talk about that as well.
True. And in both the healings that is in the chapter, there's the old astral bangle thing comes out again. So that's something cool that we can talk about again. But blue sapphires comes in, and it seems this book is following me around because just 2 days ago I was consulting an astrologer, and the astrologer recommended that I get a blue sapphire.
Wow, it's a trap, Priyank. Burn the scroll. Yeah.
Lauren,
I just realized that I'm wearing a sapphire.
ooh,
It's a blue one.
Wow.
Yeah, I've had it for a few years now.
Lauren
wear it
and
often.
Lauren and her
One of my one
blue
sapphire.
But yeah, the reason I was getting recommended sapphire is because I told you Shani or Saturn is one that is a negative for my life. So that one's supposed to counteract that. But she didn't do a proper analysis on me, but she said we have to do a proper calculation. I wasn't really interested in that. But she said that when you have like these opposing influences, rather than like trying to counter them or like defeat your planets or overcome them, as we've discussed in the past, she said it's really about just learning to swim with the tide as opposed to like being swept away by the tide, which I thought is quite nice. And we can see how Shashi and this doctor, how they do that in this chapter in varying different ways. And then at the end of this chapter is also some Guruji's study techniques, some illogical studying techniques. I'm really interested in talking about that again. I know we like talking about our school lives. And then lastly, Sri Yukteswar intercedes again, but this time it's more about a worldly intercession. So I'm interested in that and why he would do that. And again, it ends with the discussion about the ideal education. And equally, I think we all like talking about schools and education, don't we? So we can talk about that. So it should be a 4 episode, chapter, quite a short one. So this chapter starts with really a casual, interested party in Dr. Narayan Chundar Roy. And he essentially says that because you Mukunda, and his son think so highly of the Guru Sri Yukteswar, that he is also going to take a look at him. I love this. I love the you could take the doctor out of the surgery, but you can't take the doctor out of the man, can you? Or in this case, veterinary practice. This was his voice. The tone used implied that he was humoring the whim of some half-wits. Wow. It's tough, isn't it? Mike.
To be fair, that's how a lot of people meet their gurus. The question is just what happens then when you actually meet them. Are you convinced or not? Because there's a chance that you will be introduced to someone who is not a real spiritual guru.
But then in those cases, when you're like just doing it as a meeting a guru as a secondary motive, really is just, in this case, he's just, satisfying his intellectual, bias, really. That he's just, he's essentially probably going to go into it thinking, I'm going to prove that this man's a fraud almost. And then,
very possible. But that's how some people have met their gurus, right?
Yeah.
By trying to prove them to be frauds.
Yeah. But in my case, and all the four, but actually, I don't know, I haven't met any SRF devotees that came to Guruji that way. Obviously, could be, but usually it's a bit more sincere than that. Later on, we're going to talk about the different types of devotees that come to the path. But Chris?
Yeah, it just depends on your particular balance of karma, right? And I actually spoke to a lady in Colombia. I think I might have told you guys this, that I was speaking highly of my guru, and she got really interested. She was asking me to do yoga, and I told her about this, and she ended up, getting the book, and she signed up to the lessons right away. And I need to go back to her to see how she's getting on, to see if she actually really took it up, because she went to it so quickly. But it's a nice thing for us to consider, which is in the lessons, really, it says that's part of our remit, is to help through our own actions of well-being and practice, share and spread the knowledge in some way, right? And it's a nice way to think about it. Through our chemistry with our gurus and connections, we can spread the love. And even though he's a bit stubborn in this case, it's something that really does have a great impact.
How do the three of you deal with people that show a slight interest in like what you're doing, what you've based your whole life views and philosophies and outcomes on, Mike?
I feel like there are so many shades of gray when it comes to spiritual seekers, and I tend to open up to people more that are more aligned with seeking the same thing, but I don't find it super useful to share my sadhana and everything with people when they are not interested. It's a bit wasted. But on the other hand, I always try to bring the subject up in some form and see how far I can go with it when I meet a new person, because it's great to meet people who are on a similar path or have similar spiritual values.
I think of it like fishing. You can throw your line out there. You can, peacefully sort of sit, and if you get a bite, you reel it in, as it were. Maybe not the best analogy.
Yeah.
I've never fished, but to Mike's point, like you don't go all in. You don't. I don't do that. So, if somebody shows a keen interest, if they really bite and try to pursue it, then of course I'll divulge more and more.
Yeah, I'm similar to Mike too. I think I also assess quickly, the person and the situation, and kind of get a feel for, okay, how much can they sort of not grasp, but at what stage are they at, and how much of what this path is all about are they ready to hear about, right? So yeah, I think there's a fine balance, but also I also feel that being so soon into the path, it's only been 3 years or so. It's kind of like this little flame that I like to keep protected. So I'll share, what I feel is like relevant for the situation, and try and kindle the interest if they seem interested. Like people at work are sort of a couple of people, so you say about the book and things like that, but I may not sort of share, like Mike, everything, or be over zealous about it.
I have a SRF altar on my dashboard in my car, and so when I give people rides, I often get that question. And recently, I gave one of my coworkers a ride, and then she was like, "Oh, that's Yogananda, that's SRF. I grew up in Encinitas. I worked at Lotus Cafe."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we got a conversation going about that. But that still doesn't mean everyone is a devotee who is familiar with it. But at least
Yeah, sorry, finish. At least,
yeah, that's all I want to say.
Mm.
So not everyone who knows about it doesn't mean is a devotee.
I'm interested in how you got the altar to stick. Is this the fold-up altar, the travel altar, or you got a different professional one?
Yeah, I have a few spare. I can give you one next time.
How does it work?
They make them for the Lake Shrine arts and crafts sale, and it has like a little sticker and Velcro pads on the back, so you can just put it just about everywhere.
No, nice. How big is it?
No, just like this, not too
Couple
in your
of inches
face,
high.
but
Nice.
yeah.
Very nice.
Lauren's analogy, I just want to say, was way better than my fishing one. The kindling of a flame, and I suppose in this analogy, you're the oxygen. You're trying to blow a little bit, and
Yeah.
if it takes, you can keep adding, and if it goes into a big flame, then that's their doing. Really.
Yeah.
Very nice.
What about you, Priyank? What do you do?
Rank fishes with grenades.
I was gonna say, add a sprinkle a bit of like whiskey on that flame. What do I do? If they're just very similar to you. If they show a slight bit of interest, I'll go to gauge and go a bit further and say, I do this. This works for me. There's a centre in London. You should come sometime. You might like it. So little nuggets for them little breadcrumbs for them to follow to the center maybe, or I may even give them the book. I've done that in the past as well. So yeah, all good stuff that you mentioned. But it says here that Guruji, when hearing this tone from Dr. Roy, said, I concealed my indignation in the best tradition of a proselyter. And proselyter means someone who seeks to convert, essentially influence someone into the teachings and the guru. He a little bit of sarcasm there, probably you could say. So he says, and then, but this is a good question actually as well. How do you how does that vary to I don't know, Mike, before I say that, go on, Mike.
I think that's a good point Yogananda makes here, because one reason why neither of us probably opens up wide about it is because it's a very precious part of us, right? Our spiritual sadhana. And then if we have somebody who then criticizes it or doesn't see it in the same way we do, then it doesn't feel great. And maybe that's what he's feeling here, that he's such a fan and admirer of his guru, and then if someone else doesn't come with the same reverence, then he feels hurt, and that's what he has to. I think that's one reason why many people are careful with sharing their spiritual lives.
That's wisdom. It's quite wise to do that, isn't it? I really find this funny, though. I concealed my indignation in the best tradition of proselyte. Had to look up obviously what proselyte meant and how you pronounce that. Even it's not one word that is often used. But again, yeah, it just means that he's hiding the fact that he's a bit frustrated by the attitude of Dr. Roy, and he's doing that because he has ulterior motive in terms of reforming him, shall we say, because he's a veterinary surgeon and he's an agnostic. Agnostic in this case is that he, being a full-fledged scientist, thinks that nothing can be known about God, essentially. And his friend, his young son Santosh, had asked young Mukunda to, help his father to come out of this, negative way of thinking. You may say negative, but certainly not walking towards God. So he said, so far, my invaluable aid had been a bit on the invisible side. Again, this is a bit of self-deprecating sarcasm again, that his aid isn't really being being shown. It's not actually working, but he's laughing about the matter. Lauren?
Right, you were going to ask a question earlier. And you said, oh, Mike, I'll let you go before I go. And then you never asked it. Do you know what the question was?
Probably. It's probably this question.
If it's meant to be asked, it will come back into your head.
This is probably the question. So now I'm talking about a different type of devotee that shows interest. So someone that shows interest, and they don't have the best of motives in asking for your interest. That they, for example, like to not just inquire, but inquire with kind of motive to kind of like bring it down, bring you down a little bit. So how do you deal with people that show an interest, but you can see that they may want to use it against you? Like even your friend, like my friends have done this. Like they'll see that I'm a vegan or I'm into environmentalism, but then when I go take a flight, they'll be like, oh yeah, what happened to your environmentalism? And then you got to deal with that attitude, which obviously isn't very helpful. But how do you deal with those such devotees?
Are we allowed to say badly? Is that an answer?
You can.
It's challenging, right? And I was reading one of the mini booklets just yesterday, and it's the booklet on a book on relationships. I forget the title of it. How to foster good relationships really with others. And it talks about diplomacy and tact. And the diplomacy that we have to have is to be able to say, a bit of a rough thing in a nice way. And tact is knowing when to, be quiet and everything. And it was sort of saying in there that we also need to sort of treat others as how we would want to be treated. And I suppose I was reading that, and I was thinking about an instance that I had where my sister came in and turned my lights off in my room, and then when I said, "Hey, I need those lights," she said, "Well, aren't you meant to be an eco warrior?" So just exactly what you said to me. And I referred to this book where essentially it was saying, we're going to share lives with people that we have karma with in previous lives. So we're going to be tested, but really we only get tested whenever we're able to be tested. So we're going to keep getting these tests over and over again. And so our friends and family are probably going to be the ones that test us most. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I don't actually have an answer for you because I think my first answer is probably more accurate. deal with it badly most of the time, but you have to
Yeah,
try.
I tend to get frustrated too, so I share your
A saint is a sinner that never gave up. You know, that's
yeah.
one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah, it's a bit frustrating also because then it prevents you from sharing. Like the next person that shows an interest, you may you will be a bit more cautious because they might do the same thing, and then, which is a problem because then they may not benefit from something that you could share with them. So all
Well,
round it's all
we have
round
the
it's not
karmic
good.
responsibility in order to deal with every scenario as best we can, no matter.
Would you fight fire with fire, in the sense that, say someone said about just this air travel, Mike. So say someone said, why are you taking so many flights, and you've got an electric car, so you clearly care about the environment, so why are you taking so many flights? Would you say would you respond in a not an aggressive, but in an assertive way, to bring down the argument, or would you just back away and it's not worth your time?
Well, it's definitely not worth my time. And I used to be like that. I used to try to fight every single fight, but the hills that I am willing to die on have become very few these days. And this whole discussion about my carbon footprint and environment, I feel like everyone has their personal responsibility and their personal way to deal with this. And I mean, the way Chris said it was pretty good, how you deal with family and friends, because you meet them over and over again. So you actually know what you can tell them and what you shouldn't. And there are some people in my family that I love sharing things with because they're very positive people and motivating, and some people who I could tell them the greatest stories and they find some crumb in it. So it's you just learn how to deal with people, I guess. And I think this is a bit of a general answer, but I think it applies also to how I share things about my spirituality or my love for the environment.
Laura?
I think there's also a middle ground, something I've noticed is that, when people are particularly fired up about something and, you want to diffuse a situation, the best way I've found is to remain very calm, because the fire can't be fueled if you're like a calm lake or something, and eventually it will die down. So perhaps, I feel very fortunate. I haven't been in a situation yet where someone's really sort of taken the path into fire. I don't think I could handle that yet, so that's perhaps why it hasn't been given to me. But I think, yeah, if we can try and remain as calm as possible, that'll probably diffuse any fire.
Not to keep harping on about this, but the one problem with just backing away is that then they feel smug in that they've won.
But you don't have to back down to be calm. You can calmly, kind of you can calmly be in your truthful center, right? And you can stick with what your point is, but you don't have to kind of hit them over the head with it. And I think when they see someone like that, it's like, oh, okay, yes, there's no point me carrying on.
Diplomacy intact.
I love this way of thinking that there's winners and losers in each conversation, because that's like a spiral to the bottom. I feel like that's a kind of logic we have to abandon eventually, if we want to keep our peace, unfortunately.
True.
Yeah.
They may win the battle, but they may not win the war, right?
Perhaps Priyank was a soldier in his past life.
Spiritual warrior.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's true, Chris.
We're all spiritual warriors, aren't we? But Dr. Roy did eventually end up coming to the Sri Rampur Hermitage, one way or the other, for one motive or another. He did actually go, so that's a positive sign. And Guru Sri Yukteswar granted him a briefest of interviews, marked in the most part by stoic silence on both sides. Stoic being someone who has good self-control, and the visitor brusquely departed. Brusquely being abruptly departed. So again, there's a few important bits in this line that marked in the most part by silence on both sides, and it was brief. So Sri Yukteswar didn't really want to give him much time, did he? Which is strange, I think, a little bit strange. But we have to try and understand Sri Yukteswar, even though he's probably one of the gurus which is most difficult to unravel. It's strange. The reason I say it's strange is because God and gurus, we're assured, have infinite patience and will give us a million chances. And as you know, the picture behind me, God's boatman, he'll come, again and again. He'll come back with bleeding feet. But here, Sri Yukteswar is not really, he's not doing that, Lauren.
I don't find it strange personally, because I feel like Sri Yukteswar would know this man's future and probably his karma too, and where he's headed. And perhaps he feels that, this person isn't ready yet to receive any type of truth, so I'm not going to waste my time. But on your point of, they've always got infinite patience and love and giving us all of these chances to come back, I think that's true. But also we have to be willing, even though we make mistakes, okay, but yeah, we still want to do our best, and we want to go back and keep trying until we get it right. But if someone doesn't, there's nothing, the gurus can't make you. They can't, so maybe that's why he was so silent, because he realized that, it's a battle not worth fighting.
Yeah, I agree. And on top of that, he didn't come on his own accord. He was convinced by his son and a friend to come over. Maybe if he would have felt in his heart he wants to meet this guru, then the reaction would have been different.
But he must have some blessings, because his son is a devotee and is trying to transform his father's life, so he must have something. Could also, maybe Sri Yukteswar gives us the answer to how to deal with these negative kind of energy influences. He gives them A, not much time, and B, stoic silence. Or you might just say Sri Yukteswar doesn't like people that are know-it-alls, doctors and other people that believe they know it all, but that is far from the truth. What follows is a conversation about really a dark prophecy and an opportunity to go away from that prophecy. So this next slide is a bit of a hard-hitting one. Sri Yukteswar says, "Why bring a dead man to the ashram?" He questions probably young Mukunda. Mike.
That hit me when I read that, because it doesn't just mean, he sees his karma, he also expects Mukunda to know that his karma is to go soon, and that this was he sees that as a complete waste of time, like you said earlier, Frank, that he wasn't really ready to come. But saying it out loud in those words is still another level that I haven't seen before. Yeah.
Well, you have seen it before, obviously. You've read it multiple times, but perhaps you now sympathize with us, the rest of us devotees who fear Sri Yukteswar more than the other gurus. Do you now hopefully sympathize, or is it you still you don't feel that same level of fear?
I should have said the first time I read this was the first time I saw this kind of candor, but I don't know. Sri Yukteswar, I don't know why. I pray a lot to him, and I feel really close to him. So I don't think fear is the right word. I think he's great. Yeah.
You don't think he could give you the cold shoulder one day if you're just going to his ashram?
Possible. Everything's possible.
Keep it brief.
For probably for a reason, but I don't know. He's always one of the gurus I pray to, and I feel a connection.
I can't imagine Lahiri Mahashai saying these words though. But yeah, this is a Jnana avatar, so he's probably dealing with absolutes, and he's dealing with just things that are just factual.
He's like the engineer among the avatars.
Yeah, it's basically this is the equation: 1 + 1 is equal to 2. If you can't handle it,
I like it. There's no sort of hidden meaning. He's so direct. I love it.
But would you like it if it was directed towards you?
My ego wouldn't, but I think if it's for my own good, then I'd be happy to accept it.
Bruising to the ego treatment, Mukunda.
Oh yeah, I'd be battered, but that's the point.
I think we've talked about it before, Priyank. I don't know, you and I put our hands up to say we would actually go for that. As a disciplinarian style. I've been around people where they've been teachers essentially, and they've come up with very abrupt things. And some people, like me, actually take to it very well. Some people, it really rubs them up the wrong way. So, yeah, I guess it's a personal preference. Yeah.
So Sri Yukteswar said these words as soon as the Calcutta skeptic, as he calls it, had closed the door. Mukunda replies, that's not, what are you talking about? He's alive. And then Sri Yukteswar just says another matter-of-fact thing that shortly he's not going to be alive, essentially. And Mukunda is shocked. And he says, this is going to be terrible for his son to hear. Santosh really wanted to, transform or reform his father's materialistic ways. And he essentially then asks Sri Yukteswar to help him. A few interesting points in that little paragraph is that, Mike, before I do.
No, you go. I have a few points too.
So firstly, Mukunda instantly accepts the prophecy, that he instantly accepts it and acknowledges that is what's going to happen. That is how much faith he's got in every thing that Sri Yukteswar says, every conversation, which is quite a good ideal for us to live by, Chris.
And it's changed. We talked about it not so long ago, a few chapters ago, where he was having to go through these little corrections where he would question it, and then he, so we're seeing this evolution in just a short few chapters.
And the other thing to note here is that he says, "I beseech you, Master, to help the man," which is, we refer to Yogananda as a prema avatar, as an incarnation of divine love. So you can see that he feels for devotees that aren't even facing, direction of God, let alone walking in that direction, Mike.
And it's different from other stories because it's the person who is actually sick is not asking for healing. He also doesn't know he's going to die. But it's like not even his son. It's like Guruji on behalf of his son, because he really doesn't want his friend to lose his father. So it's really like like removed by a few points, but it's still almost surprising to me that then Sri Yukteswar says, "Okay, I'll help him," and he doesn't want to deal with him directly. I feel like they didn't hit it off the first time. Maybe that makes sense. And he wants Guruji to deal with him, but I don't want to go forward in the story, but Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically Yukteswar is guiding the whole thing.
Mm. It's you kind of answered my question, which is why would Mukunda demand this intercession from Sri Yukteswar? Because Sri Yukteswar didn't leave. He didn't say he may die. He's literally asking him to change the actual course, like 90 degrees change. Well, maybe 100. No, 90 degrees. Chris, you're muted.
You're on mute.
Sorry, rookie error. The word that he used was Santosh yet hopes for time to change his father's materialistic views. And I think that investment, that desire, that investment in the friend is that bond is very strong. So he put his faith in Mukunda, who in turn is then leveraging that faith with Sri Yukteswar. So it's based in positive emotions.
Indeed, indeed. The other reason for this divine love that Mukunda is throwing in this man's direction is perhaps he was a past disciple, someone that had shown even a smidgen of interest in a past life, and he's not forgetting that. Perhaps that's just conjecture, but nice to think about. So next is that Sri Yukteswar instantly agrees, instantly satisfies Mukunda's request, and he says, "Okay," but he was impassive. He said, "The proud doctor is very far in diabetes, and he doesn't even know. And then in 15 days, he'll be bed bound. The physicians will give up." And then there's a really interesting line. His natural time to leave Earth is 6 weeks from today. Philosophically, it feels like there's some depth in this, his natural time, because then obviously then Guruji intercedes, and then the natural has become extended. So it's like the story is written, the planets have aligned, but he's been given a life jacket to survive the onslaught. What do you think, Mike?
There's always a question, like, what does it actually mean when your life is over? What are you supposed to learn from it? Does that mean, I always imagine it like Guru, like when you're in a Hollywood movie or you're in a play and one of the writers, they write a role for you. And then at some point they write you out of the play, right? They go like, at some point you have to die. and maybe your learning opportunities that you have had, they have passed, and now it's over. And in that sense, it's like a really big blessing for the doctor that he gets an extra 6 months to learn that same lesson that he wasn't able to learn before. So I feel it's Sri Yukteswar intercedes for him in a very positive way to give him a chance that many other people wouldn't have.
Yeah, we touched on this in several episodes ago where we talked about destiny, karma, fate, these concepts, and this natural, quote unquote, natural way to come for your life to come to an end sounds like it's sort of destiny or fate or something along those lines. But this is what we're going to see unravel is the idea of free will that's involved in that as well, that can influence the outcome.
Indeed. So he says, owing to your intercession, so he's actually now putting this on Mukunda, that he will recover after 6. Mike?
Was any of you struck by the sentence, the proud doctor? That was like the ultimate criticism.
And the part, not even the proud doctor, the proud horse doctor. He's like, it's a bit funny, isn't it? He's going to recover, Sri Yukteswar says, but there is a condition, and we can guess that condition, that he has to wear an astrological bangle. And then Sri Yukteswar further prophesizes that he's going to object as violently as one of his horses before an operation. And it's just, it's like not even just like one layer of a prophecy, which is what we normally hear in like Shakespeare and stuff. It's like multiple like details inside the prophecy, like how he's going to, you know, decline the help, and how he's going to get worse and get better, and all these, you know, flows in his life. But yeah, Mike.
Why do you think is that? Because it's not a great inconvenience to wear a bangle. It's more like an admission that you believe in astrology or in spiritual powers that go beyond science. I think this is really what bothers him, I think, right?
Yep, I agree. The other thing that I find amusing here is that he's in this whole the last few paragraphs, he's talking about life and death of this doctor, just as you would about like a dream and a nightmare and waking up, just very, very lightly. But obviously death is like the second biggest occurrence in your life after birth, right? But you wouldn't really do this in a normal conversation with people, talk so lightheartedly about death. It's they'd call it a bit morbid, but this is how, you know, if you're going to deal with it scientifically, this is how it is. I remember, Chris, I was speaking to your dad about this actually, about death and about the books that are on death. And Dad said, "Oh, let's not talk about that one. I'd rather avoid that subject." And I said, "But why would you avoid a subject that is the most inevitable something that's going to happen? You know, to all of us, yeah." And he's like, "Oh, just no, let's not talk about it." So he didn't want to talk about death, but I don't know how that came up. But I distinctly remember that. But this is how most people.
I bought my book on it.
Okay, there you go.
Probably mention it.
There you go. This is how most people would respond, wouldn't they, when you talk about death as Sri Yukteswar is here, especially if you're prophesizing what's going to happen and what's not going to happen. But after this, Master chuckled about the horse joke, and then he said after there was a silence, during which Mukunda wondered how Santosh might use the arts of cajolery to get him to, you know, take his medicine, which is the astral bangle, which is obviously ironic because he's a doctor and he usually distributes the medicine, which is quite a good play. So the next is, as soon as the man gets well, Sri Yukteswar says, going further into the prophecy, advise him not to eat meat. One of the few references to the ideal diet of vegetarianism here, which Guruji talks about in the lessons and other places. So Sri Yukteswar says that he's not going to take this advice. I wonder, you know, because he's going to so much detail here. I wonder at where he's actually interceding and where he's just letting things take their natural course. It's quite subtle, isn't it? Where because he's just reading. He's rewritten the book, yeah, like instantly, and he's rereading the parts of the book that he's rewritten. So it's like this is like just a live reading of something that's being written as the play unfolds. It's quite profound.
Yeah, I don't know too much about this man's history. I don't understand why vegetarianism plays such a big role in his life. But maybe that was a lesson that he was supposed to learn and didn't, and that he gets a second chance to learn it here. Being vegetarian is, I think, a step further than wearing a bangle. It's a bit more of an inconvenience for some people. Even though India is probably one of the best places in the world to be vegetarian. There's so many vegetarians there, so many options. But I think the vibe that I get from this horse doctor is that he is probably not just eating meat, but also eating meat because it is his understanding of being progressive, of being, I don't know, scientific, and so this makes it even harder, not just losing your steak or chicken wings or whatever, but it's also just you're not living like according to your own principles.
Someone very close to me had brain cancer, and they were given a very short time to live. They were told actually they were going to die pretty soon. And of course, that was a bit scary for everybody, stage 4 brain cancer. The surgeon operated on it, got 100% of it out, but then said, look, it's going to come back. And so they didn't really know how much time he had, but go through all the steps that you can to try to stave this off as long as possible. He went to a doctor that was recommended by the NHS, and the doctor was saying, look, I have had, 10, I think the number is 8 or 10 or something, patients who've had serious cancer, and I've healed them all. And how I've done it is through food. And you must follow this regime, this diet, and, you should be all right. And this is something that it's kind of similar to what we're looking at here. Like, don't eat meat. The diet was, I think it was largely vegetarian, but borderline vegan. And to this person, it was the opposite to what he wanted to hear. He's a alpha. He actually joked about being the prime sort of what do you call it? The apex predator or something on the planet. Like joke that way. Bit of a sense of humor about it, but I think he sort of meant it. Thought about it this way. And he tried it for a while, and then he stopped it because he enjoyed meat too much, essentially, and he died relatively soon after, probably about 6 months after he stopped. So this is kind of like close to my heart, actually, hearing this. And I remember at the time, I said to him, look, if I recommended to do a few things, do you think you would actually be open to it? Because where we are in the scale of spectrum of life, it's probably quite far out there for most people. And this individual was pretty much on the opposite side to us. So what I realized at the time was the relationships were so delicate that I didn't want to even jeopardize, knowing that he had such little time left in his life, even jeopardize that relationship that I had with him in that time, for him revolting to say, Chris, this rubbish, because he said that to the NHS, and that's people's opinion that he held the highest in the world, doctors and scientists and things. So it's a funny dynamic that even when you're so close to someone, you sort of think, right, there might be an answer here, there might be a way out, but yet you don't really want to say it because it might actually jeopardize the relationship because people are so stubborn. So it's a funny thing, this this dynamic, and it is quite, with Sri Yukteswar laughing about it, you have to laugh because it's so daft that we get in the way of our own healing, and there's paths that we can all take. So I just thought I'd share it. It's a bit personal, but it's yeah, you gotta laugh. We're crazy beings. So stubborn. We have all that. Really.
Thank you for sharing, Chris. Yeah, we don't listen to advice. The Sri Yukteswar here carries on. He says that this 6-month extension, i.e. from 6 weeks, which is what his natural course should have been, is only because of his plea, and that essentially that in 6 months he's going to drop dead. Very, very candid. So he's granting this intercession, reading the outcome of the change to the schema and saying, Mukunda, you requested this, but it's going to make zero difference. Or did it? We don't know. We don't know for sure. But let's see if we can read in between the lines here and try and infer something to see how much merit, spiritual merit, that this doctor may have gained in this 4 months and 2 weeks worth of extended life duration. So the next section is really about how the doctor didn't really help himself, and if he had, prevention is better than seeking the cure. So they went, Mukunda and Santosh went and ordered an armlet at the jeweler's, and it was ready in a week. But of course, as Sri Yukteswar had predicted, Dr. Roy did not put it on. He refused, and he said, "I am the best in the best of health, the best a man can get. You'll never impress me with these astrological superstitions." And interestingly, the astrologer that I consulted just this week told me that astrology and astronomy were one field just up until the 17th century, where they started diverting. So if this doctor had known a bit more about his history, then may have said something different here. But the doctor glanced at him belligerently. Belligerently is that he likes conflict. He likes the adverse opinion, which is something we can see here. So Mukunda says, "I recalled with amusement that his master had justifiably compared the man to a balky horse." Stubborn horse. Another 7 days passed, and lo and behold, we know what's going to happen. He suddenly fell ill, and then and only then did he consent meekly to wearing the bangle. And the common saying, pride comes before the fall, but at least he dropped his pride on the last, at the very last instance, where he obviously was going through some very challenging health. Because I'm sure some other people would not, they're so invested in, their life science or, the profession and their outlook, that they would not, not entertain dropping their stubbornism. But he meekly consented. So I think that's one point so far for this doctor, that he agreed to wear the bangle. So that's one good thing, one little merit that he may have.
Second thing.
Second?
He
What's the second? What's the
first
first one?
went. He
Ah,
first
yes.
agreed to go.
True that. True. Second. Well done. But first, from this point of the intercession. So what merit did he gain from the 4 month and 2 week extension? This is the first one, I think. So 2 weeks later, the doctor that was attending to him said that his case was hopeless, and that he shared the terrible things, ravages that diabetes incurs, i.e. the latter stages, such as extreme thirst and excessive urination, fatigue, vision goes, but everything heals very slowly. There's numbness, loss of weight and infections. So you name it, pain everywhere. It's a very, very tough illness. I didn't know actually until I read into it just now, but it's chapter, how bad it could be. So Mukunda shook his head, and he said that Sri Yukteswar said that after a sickness lasting 1 month, Dr. Roy will be well. And you can say that he must have said this with a bit of conviction. And because the doctor stared at him, and he sought him out a fortnight later with an apology. He says that the Dr. Roy has made a complete recovery, and that he's never seen anything so amazing in his career. Mike?
I just wanted to add on to what you said about diabetes. I think insulin was not we were not able to synthesize it back then. It wasn't a cure readily available. I think today diabetes is still terrible, but if you at least take the insulin, then you can manage the disease. and don't die from it anymore. So he was before that time. So that's why we think of diabetes differently today than they probably did back then.
Right. So yeah, so then if they didn't have that, maybe these symptoms would have been even worse than the ones that I just read out. Yeah. Then he says that the doctor said that it's the most amazing case that he's ever seen, that never before has he seen the dying man make such a recovery, and that indeed that your guru must be a very healing prophet. Sant. You'd expect at this point, and we don't know, but you'd expect this doctor that was in attendance to be an instant disciple of Sri Yukteswar, having seen what impact he's had in his patient's life. But we don't know. And he probably didn't. May have gone to give him a cursory looking at, but yeah. Because if he had, then Mukunda may have probably written about it in the autobiography, but he didn't. But I think because these kind of miraculous cases are quite common, in the sense that it's always some ritual or some natal chart thing, some something that they did that just transformed, and then not that it's sorry, I shouldn't say that it's common. It's just that it's generally accepted that this happens, and you can do this to change the course of your life and heal you when you're on your deathbed and all this kind of stuff. So it that could be one of the reasons why you may not have become an instant disciple, as you or I probably would if we were in his position. So then there's another U-turn, another turn. After one interview with Dr. Roy, during which I repeated Sri Yukteswar's advice about a meatless diet, I did not see the man again for 6 months. So he stopped for a chat one evening, and as he sat on the piazza of his family home, stopped by, and this is like Mukunda just keep giving him, it's just infinite mercy, isn't it? Just infinite opportunity to turn towards God, because he's trying again and again and again. At every single opportunity he keeps trying, just like Divine Mother. And the doctor again goes back to his old ways now that he's got his health, I suppose. He says, tell your teacher that it was actually by eating meat I regained my strength. Oh man, that's just it's so tough to even read, isn't it? Let alone imagine Mukunda hearing this, knowing what he knows, and and Doctor goes even further, that he says that his unscientific advice on diet have not influenced me. You can't have been a very good scientist, because I'm sure even back then, scientifically speaking, vegetarianism was a better diet. But maybe he thought that, all the meat protein and chicken broth and whatever stuff that he ate, that was what healed him. I remember they tried to give Gandhi that, I think, when he was ill, but he refused.
So eggs, yeah.
Eggs,
yeah. Was it Gandhi's son or something that was sick, and the doctor insisted on giving him eggs. Yeah,
I think he even asked his son, do you want to? And then his son said, no, father, you make the decision, which is quite lovely, isn't it? Complete opposite to what's happening here. And Mukunda doesn't respond to this. Again, more clues about how we should deal with these types of devotees. He says it was true that Dr. Roy did look healthy. But before we go to the next stage, let's have a short reading, because Dr. Roy represents, I'd say, like a casual devotee, acting on a whim, every now and then going towards God and then going back to his old ways when when his health returns, all that kind of stuff. But he didn't. I was at a talk with Brother Smarananda Swami Smarananda in India in Delhi a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about the 3 A's that we should have. That firstly we should acknowledge the teachings and the grace of God and all that good stuff. Then we should attune to those teachings and practice them and live that life by Guruji's wishes. And then we attain to that which Guruji and God talks about God talks about Arjuna, and what Jesus Christ talks about in the second coming of Christ. So those are the three kind of layers, and you kind of get the feeling that Dr. Roy was acknowledging very slightly, but then he just reverted to his old ways as soon as his health returned. But there's a very lovely section about the 4 types of devotees and God-seeking souls. And the verse is in chapter 7, verse 16. And it says, the afflicted, the questers for wisdom, the cravers for power here and in the hereafter, and the wise. These, O Arjuna, are the 4 kinds of righteous men who pursue me. So the afflicted, the questers for wisdom, the cravers for power here and in the hereafter, and the wise. So those are the 4 layers. So the first layer is all performers of good action, whether their motives are selfish or unselfish, are traveling slowly or swiftly on the path of liberation. They are unlike the persons who by evil actions walk the tortuous path of bondage. Most people in distress seek God, though with the selfish desire of banishing physical or mental ills.
The second class of people are those who unconditionally seek wisdom in order to realize their divinity and to solve the mystery of life. They use their innate endowment of free choice to good purpose and are therefore better men than the previously mentioned selfish seekers of God. It is natural that the Lord responds more eagerly to unconditional suppliants for his love than to favor seekers.
The third class of people are those who seek complete fulfillment, which must necessarily include the giver along with his gifts. Such seekers look for God's help in attaining wealth, friends, health, power. They also practice yoga to attain bliss and all-fulfilling spiritual power in this life and in the beyond after death. In a balanced way, they are trying to find a good life as well as divine realization.
The 4th class of men are the sages, defined in the next verse as the greatest of all. Their goal is not the acquisition of knowledge, nor do they seek the Lord for any ulterior purpose. They have already attained steady wisdom and divine communion. Such souls, liberated from the temptations and attachments of delusion, perpetually united to God within their hearts, unconditionally love him. They live for him, act for him, and commune with him, just to respond.
Very nice. So 4 types of devotees there. I might ask you to rate yourselves or to rate me. If I was to
Of
score
course.
if I was to score myself, I'd put myself as a 2.5 on that scale. If I'm being generous, probably. Don't know where you guys would place yourselves, but it's interesting, isn't it? This doctor probably was teetering on 1 and then going back to 0. It's not even on there where he was like a complete doubter. But at some points he went to 1, but probably no further than 1 in this stage of his life, in this last 6 months where he had so much grace. Because as the story goes on, the next day Santosh came running from his home and said, "My father has dropped dead." Mukunda says that this, yes, Mike.
I was wondering if you think that before he passed, if he had a moment, or after he passed even, if he had a moment where he felt this was the result of my actions, and maybe for the next life he learned a lesson, or if not, I wasn't sure.
That would be the second of his blessings, merits that he gained, hopefully, in this narrative of his life. Mukunda says that this was one of the strangest experiences that he had with Sri Yukteswar, that he healed this rebellious surgeon in spite of his disbelief and extended his life just because of Mukunda's earnest supplication, which is very sweet. So he's kind of admitting that not much transformation happened here. Just that Sri Yukteswar was very kind and fulfilling Mukunda's, desire to transform this man. Sri Yukteswar was boundless in his kindness when responding to an urgent prayer of a devotee, and the devotee was Mukunda, and this really exemplifies this whole section exemplifies in chapter 12, Sri Yukteswar is described. Mukunda says he fitted the Vedic definition of a man of God, softer than the flower where kindness is concerned, stronger than thunder where principles are at stake. I think it's a really good example of all of that in this section. Because at no stage did, for example, he give in to the doctor. Like the doctor probably tried to challenge him, in various ways of what Sri Yukteswar lives his life and, how he should live his life. But he didn't entertain it. He was probably very strong, gave him this silent treatment. But he was also soft and kind and, extended his life. And I'm sure he attained some spiritual merit, even though we haven't got the information to confirm that. So yeah, lovely section of the autobiography. Strange but sweet in a way. Unless everyone's got any other points about this section, Lauren, we can talk about what's in store next week.
Well, we have Chris first. Before,
I just want to say, free will, unless guided by divine inspiration, is useless.
Yeah. It's like, Guruji teaches us so much, doesn't he? And then, if our free will is guided by him, then, it's for the best. And then if we misuse it, often we suffer. Right. So this is a really good example of that, isn't it? Of just not following the guru's advice or the advice of great ones. And we have a really similar story, but with a slight difference in the next section of this chapter with Shashi. Is that how I pronounce it? Yeah.
Shashi.
Yes. Okay.
Not sassy.
Not sassy. Again, we are introduced to a new character, Shashi, but this time he's a little bit more warmth is given by Sri Yukteswar, and he really takes to this young devotee, but then he reveals an ominous prediction about this boy's fate, and that if he doesn't change his ways, he will meet with a great misfortune. And the boy doesn't follow the advice again, and we see the outcome of that, but slightly different this time because there is a slightly unlikely ending. So that's what we'll be looking into next week.
I'm on the edge of my seat, Lauren. Thank you so much. And thank you for Chris and Michael as well for joining us today, and to the listeners and the viewers all around the world. Thank you.